Story 1: The bullied nerd who became a billionaire. Back in high school, I was basically the poorest kid around. My mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and I wore the same wore-out sneakers for 3 years straight, patched with duct tape. Kids called me trash shoes and thought I smelled weird because I couldn't afford new clothes. They even laughed at my lunch, usually stale bread and a slice of cheap ham. But I was good at one thing: coding. I stayed up every night teaching myself to build websites and apps on a beat-up old laptop that barely held a charge. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. They just kept calling me poor boy and told me I'd never be anything. Fast forward 10 years, and I'd launched a startup that took off like wildfire. Our app went viral, and we sold the company for $150 million. I invested, made more, and turned it into a billion-dollar portfolio. When the class reunion rolled around, I showed up in a brand new McLaren and a custom-tailored suit. It was surreal to see the faces of those same bullies, now balding and struggling with their mediocre sales jobs. One of them, who used to steal my lunch, actually came up to me with a resume, trying to get a job. I smiled and told him politely, "Sorry, we're only looking for people with empathy and respect." The best part? I donated $100,000 to a local scholarship fund for kids in poverty because I never wanted another kid to be humiliated the way I was. Reddit: is that a fair ending? Story 2: The ugly duckling who became a model. In high school, I was so painfully awkward it was almost a joke. Braces, terrible acne, stringy hair, skinny as a stick. Kids called me Toothpick Girl and said I looked like a praying mantis. I tried to hide in hoodies, but they still targeted me, throwing gum in my hair and leaving mean notes in my locker. Puberty hit me late, but oh boy, did it hit. After graduation, I got into fitness, changed my diet, started lifting weights. My skin cleared up, I got some curves, I gained confidence. I even got into a small local modeling agency and started doing shoots for brands. A few years later, I landed a national fitness campaign and built a big following online. My social media blew up, and I was invited to do commercials and runway shows. So when the reunion came around, I showed up in a stunning dress, heels, and the confidence I never had before. The same boys who used to ignore me were trying to get my number, acting like they'd known I was special all along. I took selfies with them, purely for the cringe, then politely let them know I was engaged to a kind, supportive partner. The shocked faces were worth every single moment of humiliation I'd felt years earlier. Reddit: do you think I was petty? Story 3: The quiet kid turned pro gamer. I was the quiet kid in school, headphones on, always reading gaming magazines instead of talking to anyone. Teachers said I was wasting my life, friends called me a loser, and even my parents worried I'd never find a job. But I love games. I built insane reflexes playing shooters, and even started streaming from a cheap laptop when Twitch was just getting popular. It took years, but I grew a following, joined a competitive esports team, and eventually signed a huge sponsorship. Millions of people watched me play, and I earned more in a month than my old teachers did in a year. When I walked into the class reunion, they were all shocked. Even the jocks, the same ones who laughed at me for playing Halo, were asking for photos. One of them actually said, "Bro, I watch your streams every night." I just grinned. Funny how things work out, huh? Reddit: would you flex or stay humble? Story 4: The fat kid who became a firefighter. In high school, I was the fat kid. They called me Porky and even Whale Boy. I hated changing in the locker room because they'd mock my chest, throw towels at me, and even try to pants me in the hallways. After graduation, I'd had enough. I joined a fitness program through the fire department. Day by day, I trained, ate better, and pushed past every insult they'd ever thrown my way. 10 years later, I was a firefighter, ripped, disciplined, respected by my crew. We saved lives together. The day of the reunion, I rolled up straight from a rescue shift, still in my uniform. People were speechless. One of the worst bullies from high school tried to flirt, telling me I looked amazing now. I laughed and told her I was happily married with kids. The stunned silence was music to my ears. Best of all, my crew knew the real me, the one who got up after being kicked down. Reddit, satisfying enough? Story 5, the choir geek who became a viral singer. In high school, my voice was my only escape. I sang in choir, but everyone teased me for being off-key or cringe. They'd mock my warm-ups and even record me singing badly on purpose to humiliate me. But after school, I trained hard, took vocal lessons, and posted song covers on TikTok. One video blew up, then another. Labels noticed, and I signed a deal. Within 2 years, I had a platinum single and was performing on Jimmy Fallon. The reunion was insane. People literally tried to act like they'd always known I'd be a star. One even said, "Dude, I told you had talent." I just laughed, because he was the same guy who dumped water on my head after a choir concert. Redemption, I guess, tastes even sweeter when it comes with a standing ovation. Reddit, would you forgive them or not? Story 6, the awkward girl became a lawyer. In school, I was painfully shy, constantly tripping over my words, hiding behind my hair. They called me Mouse Girl because I squeaked instead of talking. I worked through that, forced myself to do speech club, then debate team, then law school. I built the confidence they tried to crush. 10 years later, I was a top-tier attorney, handling major corporate cases. At the reunion, one of my old bullies was facing a nasty divorce and asked me for legal help, for free, of course. I smiled and told him I'd happily represent him, at double my usual fee. His face was priceless. Reddit, fair play or too savage? Story 7, the janitor's kid became a doctor. I was the janitor's kid. They'd tease me for my clothes, for how I smelled, even for bringing lunch in a reused grocery bag. One girl once yelled, "Why don't you clean the cafeteria like your dad?" That burned me so bad I promised myself I'd get out. I studied like crazy, got scholarships, went to med school. 10 years later, I was a trauma surgeon, saving lives every day. When I went to the reunion, I made sure to say hi to that girl who'd mocked my dad. She actually told me she'd love to date a doctor. I told her I was taken, but she could come mop my floors if she wanted. Reddit, petty or perfect? Story 8, the girl with a stutter became a news anchor. I stuttered so badly in school that teachers would just skip me for reading aloud. Kids would mimic me cruelly, making me feel worthless. But I got speech therapy, pushed myself, and found a love for journalism. I practiced, rehearsed, and eventually got a shot reading weekend news. A few years later, I became a primetime anchor on a big channel. Millions saw me nightly. At the reunion, the same kids who mimicked me had the nerve to ask if I could mention them on air. I smiled and said, "Only if you donate to the Stuttering Foundation." That shut them up real quick. Reddit, should I have named them anyway? Story 9, the invisible kid became a CEO. Nobody noticed me in school. I was literally invisible, no prom date, no parties, no friends. But I used that time to study everything about business. I started a company from my dorm room that grew beyond my wildest dreams to 50 million in annual sales. When I walked into the reunion, I wore a tailored suit, a luxury watch, and the confidence I'd never had before. People couldn't even remember my name until they saw the logo of my company on the sponsorship banner. Turns out the reunion was sponsored by me. Reddit, is that the best flex ever? Story 10, the foster kid became a psychologist. Growing up in foster care was brutal. Kids called me charity case and spread rumors that my parents abandoned me because I was broken. But I refused to break. I got therapy, worked hard, and eventually became a child psychologist. I specialized in helping kids who felt worthless like I once did. At the reunion, one of my biggest bullies confessed he was falling apart after a bad divorce. He asked if I could help. I handed him my card, at my full rate. Seeing him squirm was the best revenge I could ever have asked for. Reddit, too cold or deserved? Story 11, the failing student became a university lecturer. I nearly flunked out of high school. Teachers called me hopeless. Classmates mocked me, calling me slow and thick. But I got diagnosed with ADHD, got treatment, and realized I wasn't stupid, just different. I went on to study biology, fell in love with it, and earned a PhD. Now I teach at one of the top universities. When an old classmate came to enroll their kid, they recognized my name on the professor list. Their jaw dropped. Asterisk Mr. Sloan now teaching their kid. Feels good. Reddit, is that the best revenge? Story 12, the weird theater kid became a Netflix star. I love theater club, but the popular kids roasted me non-stop. They called me the cringe king, filmed my monologues to laugh at me. But I stuck with it, got into a performing arts school, and booked a role on a Netflix series. When I walked into the reunion, they were shocked to see me, because half of them binge-watched the very show I starred in. I just said, I'm still that cringe king, thanks for the motivation. Reddit, best mic drop ever?